some of the boys from one gun crew wanted to go across a pasture to where the other gun crew was. When they tripped the wires, they were pretty badly blown up. I got them out and got them taken care of.
That day, Larry Cheever became a hero. But his story didn't begin that day. It certainly didn't end that day. His story is one of 100 years. This longtime Winter Garden resident lives among us and has for decades. I sat down with Larry recently to do a long-form talk with him. He came to our offices in Winter Garden, Florida with his son and granddaughter, who noticeably love him, honor him, and admire him very much. Unfortunately, a matter of weeks before our sitting down together, Larry suffered from a terrible stroke. This stroke affected his speech and his ability to think quickly, as he had always done for 99 years. The sudden change was clearly difficult for him and for his family. So for this program, in addition to hearing some of my talk with Larry, we will take a look at his life and learn about this hero, this good man, this winter gardener. Tonight, through Mr. Cheever, we will focus on our history, our heritage, and our community. My name is Austin Arthur, and this is Afterthought. As a community, we need to start having conversations together that matter. Who are we now? Who were we then? And who are we going to be in the future? Let's slow down to think and discuss. This is Afterthought. Lawrence Cheever, referred to as Larry by his family and friends, was born on September 20th, 1920, on a farm in Jim Falls, Wisconsin. He was a middle child with 3 older sisters and 5 younger brothers. Out of his parents' 9 children, he is the oldest alive today, and during the creation of this episode, celebrating his 100th birthday. Being 100 years old comes with some fascinating realities. For example, Larry knew his grandmother. He would see her regularly up until her death, which was when he was 15 years old. So his memories of her are quite tangible. The reason why this is particularly interesting is because Larry's grandmother was born in 1850. That means she was about 11 years old when the Civil War broke out and about 15 years old when it ended. That places Larry 1 degree away from someone who lived through the American Civil War. Not only this, but Larry's grandfather actually fought in the Civil War for the North. Can you imagine your own grandfather having fought in the Civil War? It is highly unusual for a person living in 2020 to have this sort of direct connection. Growing up on a farm in Wisconsin during the 1920s and 30s, Larry recalls doing his duties such as logging, loading hay, moving dirt and manure. He fondly remembers sawing down trees with his father to help the building of log cabins, which his father would rent out. This was a business his father did in addition to the farm and owning a local general store.
I was on a farm till I went to the army. I used to work in the gardens, and in the winter time I cut logs. My dad was a logger, so I cut logs and worked at the sawmill in the springtime. So I've had quite a rounded education.
Larry recalls how he urged his father to buy a tractor for their farm, brand new technology for the time, but that his father insisted they were too dangerous. So they stuck with the horses and wagons. That is until 1941, when his father finally gave in and bought a Ford tractor with 2 bottom plows, purchased in exchange for 5 horses. The more I learned about Larry, the more I realized the innately good person he was. For example, he picked up the habit of smoking very early on as a young boy. The way he came to quitting was not due to a concern of health or even by the way of influence from another person. Larry quit smoking because he saw it was creating an issue with his character virtues.
We weren't always good boys. My mother suspected my smoking and one time almost caught me. I had been smoking a cigarette between 2 rows of spruce trees lining our driveway, and she came down there to see. Of course, I put it down and stepped on it when I saw her coming. Then I lied to her and said I wasn't smoking. Some years later, during the Great Depression, when cigarettes sold for 10 cents a pack, I couldn't make enough money to buy gas for my car and cigarettes, so I stole a pack and was smoking them when someone just seemed to say to me, "What is this coming to you that you have to steal to get them?" I said to myself, "That's it, no more cigarettes for me." And that is the last time I ever used tobacco in any form.
The reverence he had for his character virtues, stemmed by his Christian beliefs, would soon be put to the test. On December 7th, 1941, the United States entered World War II. Small-town farm boy Larry Cheever was one of the first waves of young men to be drafted.
To meet the demand for protection, industry is a double step to supply the sinews of safety, the armaments of war that an embattled world must have if democracy is to survive.
He soon found himself on the new Twin Cities 400 streamlined train headed for the induction center in Fort Sheridan, Illinois. They swiftly ushered all the boys into a building and into a line in which they gave them a paper to sign. This is where Larry first realized he was going to have some difficulty being an Army man.
Told me to fill out the paper, the big sheet of paper, they want me to sign it. I said, my dad told me not to sign anything unless I read it all. They said, well, you just sign that and go on, get on down the line because so you're in the Army now.
So you didn't end up reading the whole thing? You just went in line?
So I had to go sign it and go on down the line. I don't want to sign it.
Larry was now part of the 451st AAA Battalion. However, he immediately came into conflict with his superior, a man Larry would never forget, Captain Lawson.
Captain Lawson. And he used to call me in there about every night or two and give me a ball account and calling me down and calling me all kinds of names. And he wanted me to do things on Sabbath and I wouldn't. We disagreed on so many things. They marched us down to the quartermasters and they were going to hand us out the guns that we were supposed to take, and I wouldn't take a gun. I refused to take it.
I had strikes against me the moment I entered the Army. I was a Seventh-day Adventist who believed in keeping the true Sabbath of the Lord as commanded in God's Word. The other was that I objected to carrying a gun to kill my fellow man. Consequently, Captain Lawson and I had many unhappy meetings together.
Throughout the war, Larry stood by his faith and beliefs as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. On one occasion, Captain Lawson called him into his office and lambasted him, stating that if everyone believed like Larry did, that the enemy would come and take them all. Larry replied respectfully to his captain that if everyone believed as he did, there would be no conflicts. As he put it, the Lord would take care of us and we wouldn't have to fight. Many times, Captain Lawson threatened Larry with a court-martial. Larry was beside himself and did not know what to do. He wanted to serve his country, but also knew his faith and believed that he could serve without having to fire a weapon at another human being. While stationed in Georgia just before going overseas, Larry reached out to the closest SDA church, writing to the pastor, explaining his situation. The pastor came to their camp to visit Larry, but he missed him. The next morning, Captain Lawson instructed Larry to report to Colonel Gross at headquarters. Larry was trembling, expecting the worst. It turned out the pastor had spoken to Colonel Gross the day before. Larry never forgot his meeting with Colonel Gross.
He was a real gentleman officer. He immediately started talking about other things, and soon I was talking to him like an old friend. Finally, he said, "I understand you are having a problem in your battery." I said I was, and he wanted to know what about, and I told him. He said your pastor was in to see me. Then he said, "Do you think being in the medics would help any?" The next morning at revelry, Captain Lawson said, "Cheever, here are some papers for you." They were transfer papers to the medics.
Larry was now a medic in the United States Army. He was finally able to serve his country in the war effort without sacrificing his beliefs. While stationed in Casablanca, waiting for a replenishment of supplies, which had been sunken at sea by Nazi U-boats, Larry recalls seeing many hungry children that would watch the American soldiers eat. The little children used to come up to the fences and hold their cans out in hopes to get some scraps of food. It was not protocol to do such a thing with their rations.
The children were very hungry, and they'd go get cans from the dump and bring them up and hold them out for us. So I used to keep little extras for them. And one time the cook made a great big cake, and he gave us a piece, about that big of a square. And I took a knife and cut mine in two, and I left half of it for them. And some of the boys saw me do it, and they reported me to the officers. And when I came to for chow the next time, the lieutenant said,
"Cheever, I understand you are giving your food to these children." I said, "Yes, sir." Then I got the surprise of my life. Instead of him bawling me out, he said, "When chow is over, you come with me, and we will take all the leftovers in the big kettle in a jeep out on the hill and watch the children come and get it." I never heard any more about me giving food to the children.
Where Larry saw the most action in horror was during his time in the Italian campaign of the war, where the Allied forces faced tens of thousands of casualties. The Battle of Anzio.
Anzio.
What was that like on the beachhead there? Do you remember the experience there on Anzio Beach? Do you recall it?
I remember that. That was probably the worst place we were ever at. We lost more men there than we did all the rest of the world.
The moment that codified Larry's heroism is when he saved two men who were suffering potentially fatal injuries in the middle of a minefield. Portions of their body had been mutilated due to their stepping on mines in the field which they had laid. Larry, along with his friend, Shorty Sturgeon, did not hesitate to walk out into the minefield, risking their own lives to save those two men. And they did.
Some of the boys from one gun crew wanted to go across a pasture to where the other gun crew was. When they tripped the wires, they were pretty badly blown up. I got them out and got them taken care of.
The men Larry saved were John X. Cota and Walter H. McGrath. After they recovered, they immediately wrote to Larry, thanking him for risking his life by walking into that minefield to save theirs. The local newspaper got a hold of the letter and published it in an article that Larry's parents received and read even before Larry ever knew of it. The war did not end without Larry seeing his old captain again, the one that gave him so much trouble at the beginning of the war.
My name was called to receive the Bronze Star Medal for going beyond the call of duty. Captain Lawson, who had never returned my salutes and had always tried to belittle me by calling me names such as Goldbrick, etc., was the one who pinned it on me. I may never know if he was ordered to pin it on me or if it was his own choice to do so.
Where do you think the source of wisdom is?
From the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I carried a Bible even when I was in the Army. I had a Bible with me all the way through the Army. And I've always, ever since I was in my teens, I became a Christian, and I've been one ever since.
If you could say anything to your future posterity, anything to your family for many years to come, what would be the most important thing you want to tell them? Any advice or anything like that?
The most important thing would be to stay close to the Lord.